bringing you inside the USL Championship and League One.
Segmer's got there, Marquinhos! He's been knocking on the door! He knocks it down!
Diving into all the biggest stories and top headlines.
You are ripping and roaring today.
This is USL All Access.
It's almost impossible to recreate that level of magic.
With Mike Watts and
Welcome to our first playoff edition of USL All Access. Very happy regular season is over, wherever you may be, with Devon Kerr and Emmett McConnell at the controls. I'm Mike Watts. Devon, congratulations on another arduous 34-game season in the rearview mirror. Judgment Day just happened. Do you feel like you've been judged?
No truer words have ever been spoken in this job and in the world that is social media. But I'm going to say something to you that I never thought I would say for any competition at any level when it comes to USL Championship in 2025. And I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, but let it be known that I've already gone to the powers that being said, I want more games. I swear, I've already gone to the front office and said, listen, we got to keep growing this thing. We got to keep pushing. I will do whatever it takes to make sure that not just myself, but Mike Watts, the entirety of the league, we're getting more games on national television in years to come. That's how excited I am about next year. We got a little bit to talk about some work that has to be done, because who knew that after the regular season, there's a little bit more to go.
You're not done yet. You're not going anywhere. Well, you're staying right here.
I'm not leaving.
Dev, a ton on Judgment Day to talk about, primarily seeding. We're going to start in the East because there were still a couple of playoff berths left to be decided. Hartford had a really clear path in. Loudoun had one in which 4 results all had to drop in the same way. Ultimately, no real surprises, I suppose, in the East. Let's run you through it. So Louisville and Charleston handled their business. The Battery, by winning against Loudoun, eliminated them. Louisville win kept Phoenix in 8th. We'll talk about Louisville's body of work later on. Detroit, they were locked into the 3 already. They beat San Antonio 4-1. San Antonio was actually down a man for part of that game. The real drama was at the red line here. So Hartford needed either North Carolina or Pittsburgh to drop points and win in Orange County. But that drama never really made it all the way to Orange County. It was settled in the 7 o'clock window. It was predicated in part on Wednesday's result, so I want to go back to that first. Hartford drew Tampa Bay 1-1 in Bradenton. If they had won that game, they would have had control over one of the final 2 positions in the playoffs with a win. However, that's not what happened. If you hear Hartford fans, and I hear you, I really do, there's the argument North Carolina got the extra home game because the Rowdies ended up having to move one of their final 3 home games up to Cary because they didn't have a venue after Hurricane Helene. And then, of course, North Carolina won that game. 1, obvious. 2, penalties missed in that game that obviously left Brendan Burke pretty ticked. He got sent off, although the reason for that is a whole different kettle of fish. Dev, any beef with how that went down on Wednesday?
I have beef with the idea from fans that they're upset about the game, the home game.
All right. I'm glad you brought that up. Is it
It's a
fair
hurricane.
Let me just say there's an announcer in our league who lost his house. Like, totaled his house. You're worried about where they're going to play the game?
And here's my thing. Just jump in for a second. Where else did they expect them to do it, Mike? We don't live in a world where the neutral venue is an option, given the way that the league works and the financial backing of both of them. This was the obvious choice, and it was the easiest one. Clubs worked it out. They both agreed to it. I'm not exactly sure what everybody else wanted to do. And to your point, there are things much bigger than what are going on here. Are we forgetting about all of that?
I'm a little put off. And part of my problem was I started seeing it creep in the day the game got postponed in the first place. You've seen what happened with Hurricane Milton and the Trop. Hurricane Helene did a ton of damage to the waterfront in St. Pete. I don't know that we know the full extent of the damage that's been done to Al Lang, to that area yet. Like,
Here's the best way to depict that. This isn't something that's just going to affect the final games of this season. Let's put it that way. That's
No.
the best way to describe to everybody about the mess that everyone in the league, in the Rowdies front office, the families are having to deal with. And to me, that's probably the biggest one. We're going to talk about the game preview overall for the Tampa Bay Rowdies and having to be a team on the road at Detroit and what it looked like down the stretch. But the displacement of the families and what everybody's actual structure of their lives are dealing with is the biggest thing for me here.
Yeah, no doubt. So that leads to Saturday. North Carolina outlasts Las Vegas 2-1. They get in. Phoenix dominates El Paso 2-0. They hold on to 8th place. I'm sorry, Phoenix. Pittsburgh.
Easy.
Yeah. Pittsburgh holds on to 7th place. Slow down. All right.
You talk. Are these your picks for the bookie, or what's going on here?
Yeah, right. That's in the toilet bowl. So that meant Hartford had no ability to play for anything in Orange County on the last game of the year. North Carolina and Pittsburgh getting in. Surprised or not, I think the way it went into the last day, I'm a little surprised North Carolina won the game. And That's not a knock on North Carolina. Las Vegas had everything to play for. They had set themselves up to be ready for that game. I'm a little surprised that ended the way it did. I thought they'd drop points, maybe not lose, but drop points and at least give us some drama at 10 o'clock. That didn't work out.
No, and given the way that Las Vegas played down the stretch, what was it? 2 losses in the final 20? Is that what we finished at? Yeah, roughly in that area. The confidence that they're playing with, the control is probably the biggest one for me, and how they just maintained a grasp on every single game that they were in, whether they were fighting from behind or scored a goal in the opening 15 minutes. I was actually quite surprised that they took this win down. Not as surprised when, you mentioned Pittsburgh, but not a surprise for Pittsburgh sneaking into the playoffs, although people call it sneaking. That's the verbiage being used. Don't agree with that. North Carolina's body of work down the stretch is something that I think we can address in the preview because they had to get it done in an interesting way. We'll put it that way.
While we're at it, from the Wednesday game, the Rowdies, right? So they had a chance with games in hand to go catch a home playoff game. Where they would have played it, how that would have played out is irrelevant now. Drew midweek against Hartford, as we mentioned. That kept them out of the fight for the 4 seed. Indy takes the 4th spot. Indy will get a chance on tiebreak over Rhode Island to host a playoff game despite their result over the weekend. And then Rhode Island drills Miami 8-1 and grabbed 5th by a point over Tampa Bay. So the Rowdies had a chance on Wednesday to hang on to 4th, end up in 6th. Rhode Island jump up to 5th. Indy hang on to the home playoff game. All makes sense?
Biggest talking point for me down the stretch, specifically for the Tampa Bay Rowdies there, Mike, is the fact that they're scoring again, and most importantly, you got Arteaga and Jennings on the score sheet. It's one thing to hit the back of the net. It's two, to have probably the 2 most important pieces to that team and the way that their identity functions to create confidence heading into the postseason.
All right. Meanwhile, the West, all 8 teams. I'm a mess. Mess.
Your upsets galore in terms of your picks. You've got a betting problem. You can't speak. What is going on over there?
Horrific. All 8 spots were settled. It was really only seeding from 2 to 8, and the 8th seed got handled when Louisville beat Phoenix opening game of the night. The home game drama, everything shifted 2 through 5. Memphis 3-2 win over New Mexico, who are locked into the 1, takes 901 FC up to 3rd. They can now potentially host first, maybe second round game is realistic all of a sudden. New Mexico skids to 5 winless to close out the year, but it doesn't affect their seeding. Sacramento saw Colorado Springs on the last day. Juan Tejada scores only his 2nd goal of the season in the 85th minute. That cost Sacramento substantially. So Las Vegas controlled the 2 seed, lost at North Carolina, tumbled to 4th, but they finish over Sacramento to get a home game. And so Sacramento goes from potentially finishing 2nd, 2 home playoff games. And you and I have been around the financials of this league long enough. Do $20 times 10,000 tickets and multiply it by 2. That is a lot of money that Sacramento is not going to see because they slid down to 5th. And there's the disadvantage of having to play on the road in Las Vegas.
Okay, so the second part of that is an interesting one. Do we want to discuss that now or in their actual preview against Vegas in terms of having to play on the road?
I'm going preview, but the overarching nature of Sacramento, do you think they're better off away?
I do. I'm going to give a little tease here, and I think they're better off away. We'll get it once we get into the preview, segment 3, when we talk about the Sac Vegas game. I do believe they're better on the road, but still a massive letdown. Did you see the discourse bouncing around on social media from the Brickyard Battalion, Tower Bridge Battalion?
Bridge.
Tower Bridge Battalion. They are unhappy with Kevin Nagel. Let's just put it that way. I'll send you the link, and it's this whole subtweeting, and it's probably 40 responses deep, including a local radio personality and Kevin Nagel going back and forth at the fans feeling like they've been left out to dry, that there hasn't been enough continued support, forget investment, support from the actual owner since his acquisition of Huddersfield. I'm not passing judgment on that. I'm just relaying as to what I saw on social media. It was quite staggering for me to see that, considering this is still an extremely talented team. That although we are 24 months removed from that Open Cup final in 2022, from a roster standpoint, they're better since then. Mm-hmm. And yet, they are an absolute shell of themselves. There's a lot going on there in a negative sense that I'm very, very surprised, considering they are still in another postseason and have the ability to chase another title just like they did in 14.
Yep. Finish out the West here. Oakland blown out by Birmingham. That allows Orange County to jump into the 7, or drop into the 6. Oakland drops to the 7.
We're only 12 minutes into this. Do you want to start?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Phoenix and New Mexico, the only seeds that do not change. Of course, they'll face each other. Dev, let's talk about the Golden Awards, the boot, the playmaker, the gloves. Nick Marcanic, he wins it by 9. The Golden Boot, 28, league record, never in doubt.
The best thing that I've seen so far about this, I know we follow each other on Instagram, but I don't know if you saw the add to my story off of USL Championship post when it said the race for the Golden Boot. I'm like, he's 9 goals ahead. What's the race with 1 game to go?
Oh, goodness gracious.
And a historic season for Marcanic, no question whatsoever. His influence on the Charleston Battery. I actually had a weird little situation on the weekend prior to the match. An announcer reached out to me Saturday before the game and said, hey, and they'll remain nameless, hey, what do you think about Marcanic and his form, and do you think he has the ability to play in MLS? I'm taking that for face value in the sense that you have no idea what's going on, and the fact that he's been sold, and at least as we're talking right now, he ain't in this country next year.
No.
And while maybe long-term he makes his way back, or even a couple of months down the road he gets loaned back to the championship or loaned back to the United States in MLS, we ain't there yet. So maybe just do a little bit of research. It's not that hard.
All right. Golden Playmaker is Noah Fuson from Rhode Island. Not the biggest assist here. Not the biggest number.
No. I mean, look, his play deserves it. We're going to talk more about the body of work for Rhode Island in their preview, and I'm not taking away from his individual efforts. I kind of went on a rampage, 3 weeks ago now, in a previous show about how the art of the 10 and the playmaker in this league, it feels gone. Yeah. It's weird because we have those guys in League One, right? The Pedro Dolabella of the Union Omaha is certainly one that steps out for me. And there's plenty, and I apologize for just naming one, but MLS has theirs as well. Just kind of feels like we don't really have that anymore.
How many number 10s in MLS are American?
Ooh. Starting?
Right. I mean, the elite. The elite. Lucho Acosta. Maybe he gets citizenship. Wasn't developed here. I'll leave this to you later. We've got to move.
A natural-born citizen is the way that you're phrasing that.
Correct. Developed in this country. Does not have to be natural born citizen. It has to be developed in this country.
Would you
Not
consider,
often
and
enough.
obviously he's not an out-and-out 10. I'm just talking about within the system. We're getting off topic here. Is Julian Gressel a 10?
And you know what? I'm fine with that.
He's
Absolutely.
I mean, with his
but
background, you got to be fine with it.
few and far between. They're few and far between.
No, for sure. Fully agree with that.
The nature of the championships makeup, nationality-wise, relative to MLS, is very different.
Watch my boy Peter Stroud 10 years from now, looking back. Guy from New York Red Bull, Duke Blue Devil, and the great career that he's going to have. He's more of an A10 hybrid, but still, we digress. I'm officially starting a Kickstarter, crowdfunder. We don't really need any money, just support here. I'm going to the league office here on this one, Mike. We are done with the name, Golden Playmaker.
Okay.
I am officially accepting suggestions. I think we should put it out on social media. You can be the first one. I'm happy to open the box up to you. We'll put it right next to mailbag. Oh, we got to change the name. I've heard rumblings of what the name was actually supposed to be. We ended up on this, and by we didn't get a vote, much like Player of the Year. That seems to never happen anyway. We're changing the name. Okay? Are you with me on this?
Yeah, I guess.
Great. Does it have to? Most importantly, does a color have to remain? Usually silver ball, right?
I can't believe we've spent 3 minutes talking about the statistical assist winner and the name of its trophy.
The problem is we haven't. We've somewhat made our way around the award overall. Fuson, you deserve it. Look, from a statistical standpoint, you're the number one. Go rip it up in postseason play. Your team needs you.
Devin, what if I tell you that the Golden Gloves belong to Dick, who finished with a goal against average of 0.69?
I would say that I have one little problem with this award, although I don't know how to change it. It's kind of like our playoff conversation. Do we think, I know it's a minutes thing, but do we think that the requirement to win the Golden Glove should have a certain percentage of games played for the team? He's right at 75. 26 appearances for me, as well as, and this isn't, let's be clear, from a statistical standpoint, Eric Dick would still win this award. That's why it's an average, but 26 out of 34 games, that's too much of a margin. Like, what could go wrong in 5 more games? I mean, in 5 games, he could give up 15 goals. We don't know. And what if those 5 games occurred early on in the season when Pittsburgh were getting railroaded by squads?
Yeah, I think 75% is actually adequate.
All right. He's 75.4, 75.7.
Yeah, but where's the line? Would you make it 30 out of 34?
That's what I'm saying is I don't have an answer for this.
No,
right?
it's just tough, right? Because you pull your hamstring and you miss a couple midweeks. I mean, you're out 2 weeks and suddenly you're not eligible. You know.
I will say that we here's where I would like to give credit, and I'm moving away from the goals against average. 14 shutouts. I get it. It's a Bob Lilly team. Eric Dick has had a phenomenal year. I've seen plenty of performances from him where he has stood on his head to keep his team in games. And remember, 14 shutouts. The record is 15.
Right.
Now, to me, that record carries an asterisk because Jordan Farr in 2022 came off of the field because, oh my goodness, what is his name? Matt Cardone. Thank you very much. He gave Matt Cardone his swan song to come on as a substitute in his final game, and they didn't award Jordan Farr with the shutout. If they would have given Jordan Farr the shutout, he would hold the record of 16 by himself. So I think that's an absolute travesty. But still, Eric Dick is just one off the regular season record, and he missed 8 games. One wonders, just like the goals that may have come, the shutouts that could have followed, and whether or not, especially considering Pittsburgh's form, if he could have been involved in that record-breaking season.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Olex Anderson, North Carolina's all-time record goal scorer, scores against Vegas, 36 now, 91 games. Dev, let's close with this. What's going on in Phoenix, or what's reportedly going on in Phoenix?
Tom Bogert has come out that Pa Muduka has accepted the job for Phoenix Rising as the new head coach. Now, Phoenix hasn't come out and responded with anything yet. I do know that behind the scenes, there are a ton of candidates. Out of respect for their privacy and also their willingness to share that information with us, I can't divulge what those names were, but they were huge names, very, very big names on a regular basis. Guys from all over the world, truly. I'm not just blowing smoke. I don't do that. how they end up with Pa Moduka, there's a couple of different reasons. Number one, I think there's an expectation with him as a coach from what we've seen, both as an assistant at Charlotte and certainly his time, which I got an opportunity to interact with as the head coach of North Texas, the second team under FC Dallas. Started off in League One, obviously in MLS Next Pro now. Eric Quill had experience there too. He's quite demanding. And he's got sort of an old school, new school mentality that's in your face, but also respectful of what each individual needs, that player type manager. I like that breed of person. And they talk about, Charlotte talks about his ability to connect with so many different people, speaks 8 languages, recognizes different cultures. You know, that Charlotte team with Dean Smith as a helm, that's the type of club that has gone out and literally internationally pieced different spots together. It's Europe, it's the Far East, it's Africa, it's the United States. They've gone south of the border of Mexico, the Canadian, like they've had everything within the group. Pa Moduka resonates with every single person's environment. That's something that's important for a Phoenix team that historically likes to challenge their roster in very similar fashion. Now, whether or not this actually happens, we'll see. But I do think that if they end up here, certainly in terms of my experience with him, what I've heard from people that I value in terms of their trust and opinion, and what we've seen in terms of results, it looks to be a good hire.
We'll see whether or not that gets confirmed, and we'll have more news on that as it comes along. All right, Eastern Conference quarterfinals are coming up. Saturday and Sunday matches. We'll preview them all when we come back.
Let's get back to USL All Access on SiriusXM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We're back here on USL All Access. It is the first round of the playoffs. It means we have 8 games to cover, 4 in the East, 4 in the West. And we start in the Eastern Conference because this is an Eastern bias show. With Devin, Mike, let's dig into it. Charleston and Pittsburgh is the 2-7 game. You'll see it on ESPN Plus Saturday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, which is sort of the standard Charleston home game start. Pittsburgh won the season series. They drew in June, 2-0 Pittsburgh win in the Steel City on October 12th. Pittsburgh over the last 16 games, 30 goals scored, 8 goals allowed, 9-1-6. They blow out Miami, Charleston, Loudoun, and El Paso over the last 4 games. Dev, Bob Lilly told me this week, he was talking about the 16-game stretch to close the year. For one, that's half a season, right? Second, 15 down, 5 to go. That's the focus. They allow fewer goals than last year. Kiz has scored in 5 games running. Charleston, Malloy is healthy, 2-1 win in the finale, arguably their best 11 played in that game. They finished 1-1-2. What do you think?
The fact that Bob Lilly is saying that scares the ever-living you-know-what out of me, because Bob is a guy who is always willing to give you his time, certainly tell you how he feels, but is so polite and gentle in nature about that environment that for him to walk in and go, yeah, 5 to go, that seems like there's a real intent that he's going to make people feel really bad about themselves coming down the stretch in the best of ways. That scares me. There are 2 key things to me for this Pittsburgh Riverhounds team coming down the stretch, and they both rely on the offensive side. Number one, confidence. It's just watching these guys play. You know, the addition, I saw Mike on the format there. You put Bertrand Jacquesson in. Bob Lilly's identification of talent is one thing. His utilization over the past 3 years of more local pieces, getting some of these academy guys some minutes, bringing guys like Robbie Mertz back into the mix, Jackson Walty, Bertrand Jacquesson. All of a sudden, the pipeline is not just a pathway to pro from the youth ranks into Pittsburgh Riverhounds. He's grabbing the college kids that are lighting it up under Jay Vidovich over at Pitt. Bertrand Jacquesson, for people that want to know, 42 goal contributions, 19 goals, 23 assists, in 57 total games in college. He was one of the most electrifying players while he was there, and the reason was because he was so forward-thinking in nature, and he was always willing to go challenge people. That's not a profile that Pittsburgh has really had. When you start to pair him with an Edward Kizza who can be physical, who can make a backline feel uncomfortable, that opens up more space for guys like Robbie Mertz, for Walty to push things forward, certainly Danny Griffin. All of a sudden, defensively, Pittsburgh have a lot less responsibility in terms of how deep they are pinned into their own half. They get to play the game higher, and they find success on the offensive side of the ball.
You have a favorite in that game? I don't. I really don't.
I don't. I actually think if I had to look at an upset in the 8 games spread between the East and the West, that's probably got the highest percentage point. And the only reason I say that is what we talked about last week. Getting all of your starters on the field at high form come the end of the season is something that under Lee Cohen and under Ben Pierman, historically with Memphis and the Rowdies and Battery last year, they've been great at. They've gotten one game really in the final 10 where they have everyone. Most importantly, Aaron Malloy within the midfield. And while I thought he looked pretty clean in his performance on the weekend and they got a result, I'm a little bit scared for them in that first round game.
Yep. Detroit and Tampa Bay, half an hour later, Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN+. Detroit won the season series 1-1. They drew in July. Game-tying goal in the 90-plus in that game from the Rowdies. Detroit won 3-2 in Tampa on August 21st. Ben Morris, a second-half brace. First ever game that Detroit hosts in the playoffs in the championship at Keyworth. That was their goal all year. They had locked up the 3 seed, finished 9 games unbeaten. Tampa Bay, 4-game losing streak ends with 4 points in the last week. A draw against Hartford, win against Indy. What's the focus?
I would still say that Detroit, no matter what, regardless of seeding, is one of the most difficult places to play. And now the fact that you've given them confidence as one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, everybody should be put on notice in the fact that they are going to feel like they are untouchable at home. I'm happy for the Rowdies. I talked a little bit about it in Cal Jennings and Arteaga. Still a little bit shaky within the midfield for me. I think they lack a little bit of quality on the outside in terms of what I've seen defensively. Things look better, and you still got Jordan Farr on the defensive side. Jordan Farr, one of the best goalkeepers in the USL Championship. He's certainly making his name historically for one of the biggest names to ever grace the 8x8. I wonder how much he's going to have to face. That's a mental battle for the Tampa Bay Rowdies on the road, if more than anything. If they can get away from their game, can they still maintain it mentally? Over the past couple of weeks, they've been tested as people. My hope is that that character starts to shine bright for them on the road to help give them a result. That's a difficult task.
Louisville will see North Carolina in the 1-8 game on Saturday at 7:30 Eastern time. That's also on ESPN+. Louisville won the season series, but it's not what it looks like. Louisville 2-1 in Louisville June 8th. They go to North Carolina August 31st and play a 6-4 barn burner with 3 own goals, 1 penalty, and Louisville trailed a 1-1-2 and 3-4 in that game. Louisville 1 loss in the last 11, 2 in the last 17 going back to July. They set the home win record 16-1-0 all year. They lost to Rhode Island in June. Beat Phoenix after falling behind. North Carolina, 4 out of 5 wins, 6 out of 9 to get into the field. They've only won 3 games away from Cary all year. Miami, Free Square, Orange County, and Birmingham. Dozen goals from Anderson and Conway each. I will say this, Dev, the one thing that scares me, Louisville has fallen behind in 5 of their last 7 games, and they dug out of 4 of those 5. It just makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Oh, that little pinch of nervous. I don't think it bites them this week, but it could.
I don't know if Anderson and Conway have enough. I need more out of DaCosta and his chance creation. I like what I've seen of Perez in the midfield and Colin Martin next to him. I think they've done well for themselves, but the midfield to me is not what this is going to be about. I'm with you. I think they have to score early if you're North Carolina and make this Louisville team work for it. My question for you, Mike, is if the upset occurs, is it the biggest first-round upset in USL Championship history? Because remember, we had Detroit over Pittsburgh last year. That was a 1-8. I don't know.
Didn't view that in the same way.
No,
it was a much
different.
more workman-like year from Pittsburgh, and that sounds like a knock. I promise it's not. It's just the way Louisville has so soundly run away with this on the attacking end. You just assume that there's going to be some goals here.
We've seen the Monarchs. We've seen SAC trade blows in the 1-8s in previous years. This would just feel different to me if North Carolina was able to pull it off, especially because over 17 games, Louisville have 16 wins in that window. Pretty absurd.
And I will add to this, and let's not forget that Pittsburgh had the win record for home games.
Correct.
Last year and then lost. But Detroit's a little different of a beast, in my opinion. Here's the other thing. Danny Cruz was on the 1-8 Monarchs team that lost. He's been talking about that. He said Arturo Ordonez was on the Pittsburgh team that lost. They are well aware of the 1-8.
And if this game, at least for me, if this game is to be a result for North Carolina, to me, it's not a back and forth barn burner. They can't handle that pace. We just saw it a couple of weeks ago. 10 freaking goals, right?
Yeah.
The 6-4 match. I do think that they need to score early. I do. I don't believe they have the ability to fight a 0-0 game and nick one at the end. That's just me. My view of it is a goal in the opening 15, 20 minutes, batten down the hatches and hang on. If they can do that. That's just the way that I view the game for them tactically.
Yep. Indy and Rhode Island is a Sunday game, time to be determined. 1 or 7 p.m. is what they're printing on the tickets. It's on ESPN Plus. Indy 1-0-1 this year. They drew 3-3 in July. Isaac King game-tying goal and stoppage. Indy 1-1-0 August 7th in Indy. Winzati the game winner. Rhode Island finished the 6 unbeaten. Dequa came back, played 33 minutes, and scored off injury against Miami Saturday. Fuson, obviously, golden playmaker, 10 dimes. Rhode Island's 15 draws, a league record. It kept them afloat in the early going. Indy 4-2-4 to earn the home game over the last 10. Head-to-head advantage is what got them the 51 points tiebreaker. Also have 6 with 3 or more goals. Dev?
Well, first of all, are you aware of why there's a scheduling issue? It's not a bad thing.
No, the IUPUI soccer team, no?
IUPUI women's soccer team specifically. So they have a game that last weekend, I'm making sure I get this right here, if they would have won last weekend, they would have known exactly the time frame they were able to play because they would have held seating rights and they could have determined that. Right. They didn't. I can't remember if it was a draw or a loss. So now the time is actually determined by their game tonight. Tonight, actually. Their game time is determined tonight as to whether or not they're going to play in the 1-7 on the weekend. Indy, playing well. I think they're playing better. Coming off the loss against the Tampa Bay Rowdies, certainly you never want to head into postseason play coming off a loss, and never do you want to do it conceding 3. There were a couple of questions for me. Number one, who can control the rotation? I don't necessarily care where it is on the field because you're given so much freedom. The thing that I love about Cano Smith, trust the wingbacks, trust the strikers, trust the midfielders. There's aggression off the back line. That opens up a lot of space, and they've become, towards the end of this year, very good at closing down the gaps that they've opened up within those rotations. Indy 11 do the exact same thing, and especially on that front line. So if Rhode Island's playing a little bit high, you get the wrong rotation. You need lightning quick coverage the way that team likes to counter. Here's my other question, Mike. I want to look at it as a glass half full when it comes to the character thing and how they've retained relevance, 15 draws on the year. We've discussed it all season long, staying in games. Number one, and body of work is a big thing for me, 4-7-11 against teams who made the playoffs. 4 wins in 22. That concerns me. Those 4 wins, 2 at home, 2 on the road, separated by 6 months. I would also say that one of those wins, although certainly I've been on the Vegas bandwagon for quite some time now, I said late May, early June, that win happened in April. Vegas didn't know who it was in April. We didn't know who Vegas was. So there's an asterisk next to that one. Out of the 15 draws, they only led in 5. Okay, so you look at it and go, okay, well, they, 30% of the time they gave up the game-tying goal and they got a draw. Yeah, well, I'd look at it the fact that 66% of the time they were able to stay within a game and find a way, last ditch or not, to get it. So much so that they've got 16 goals in the final 15 minutes. The only 2 teams who have more, Charleston Battery at 19, Louisville City at 21. That's pretty good company to have. I don't know if they can do it on the road in a playoff game against an Indy team that, to me, in the 2 previous matchups, won the games, regardless of scoreline, right? I just thought that they outplayed them. I do, however, think that both 4 or 5 games, the East and West, and this one specifically, is probably the tightest of margins we're going to see, at least from a numbers standpoint when it comes to postseason matchups in the first round.
Yep, and the winner of that game would either go to Louisville or host North Carolina. We don't reseed in the championship as well. So 3 Eastern games on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. with a time to be determined. When we come back, we'll take a look at the Western Conference quarterfinals, including the national TV game pick, which shouldn't surprise you. It's next here on USL All Access.
Giving insight to all the biggest moments in Championship and League One. This is USL All Access on SiriusXM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back to USL All Access. It is Wednesday night. Rarity. We should be back on Tuesday next week. Western Conference quarterfinals are on the way, and they start on Friday night. Las Vegas hosting Sacramento. Who could have seen this coming? Las Vegas won both meetings. They won 1-0 in Sacramento in July, pinned zone in the 10th. They won 2-1 in Las Vegas September 21st, led 2-1 at 71. Akebu got sent off at 76. Phillips scored the opener in that game. Believe it or not, despite how bad Vegas has been over the years, Sacramento is only 3-3-1 all time at Cashman. Vegas slid from second to fourth with losses to Oakland and North Carolina of all teams over the last two games, but they are hosting plus 30 year over year in points, second only to Charleston all time. Dennis Sanchez, the former Sacramento Academy director. Meanwhile, the Republic, number one seed convo until the late August. Now they're not hosting a playoff game at all. 0-3-2 since they blew out New Mexico 4-0 at the end of September. Dev.
I said earlier that I'm not concerned about the road thing, and here's why. Sacramento Republic, for quite some time over the course of the season, were trying to find a way, Mike, to get a result away from, at home. Like, we had extended conversations with Mark Briggs early to midseason about how their form on the road was just better. Remember, double-digit unbeaten streak to start the year. They just felt like there was less pressure on them, and they had more confidence going away from Sacramento. I don't understand why. He couldn't explain it. I can't explain it. I've watched the performances over and over again, and it just seems like there's a little bit more pep in the step. I think none better represented personally than you and I's personal experience on the road at Oakland for the CBS game in late July. And I can remember coming away from it. It was the 5-2 victory where they just throttled Oakland. Now, I understand that Oakland is a shell of what they were. It's not exactly what we thought they were going to be. It's what I thought they were going to be. But a lot of people didn't think what they were going to be. Sac needs to get rid of everything that they thought they needed to be. And I think there is this misnomer about that Sacramento Republic team within the locker room. And I'm just guessing here. There's no conversations. But, quickly, Mike, this team went from a playoff fringe team to unfulfilled expectations to the Open Cup run. And then last season really put forth the idea of you have to win, you have to be number one, you have to win a title. And while that's all said and good, if the results don't come, you have to find a way to reinvent yourself. To me, this is a clean slate right now. And I think you have to have all the confidence in the world. The way that they can move the ball in transition, they're comfortable playing up high. I do think that they have the capability. I also think that they're going to have to suffer a little bit here because of how comfortable Vegas is on the ball and how much they're going to make them work. And I don't know, given the lack of confidence from the SAC team and their poor results down the stretch, I don't know if they have enough in them in terms of depth, which is hard to say considering the roster, but depth and confidence combined, if they go down and if they have to chase, that's a real problem.
Memphis and Orange County is Saturday. It's at 2 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN+. Orange County won both games in the series. They won 2-0 in Memphis in April. They won 4-1 in July in Irvine. It's only the fifth meeting all time. Orange County is 3-0-1 in those games. Memphis handles their business at the end. Drew Oakland and Sac at home. Won at Phoenix and New Mexico on the road to close. Lapa's best statistical season since his rookie year in Birmingham. 11 goals, 5 dimes. Orange County, 0-6 loss at Charleston. Replace Paul Hardiman. Scathing letter from their owner, James Keston. Take Las Vegas to the limit the following week in Danny Stone's first game and then rip off 8 unbeaten to close the year. They had a break after that Las Vegas game. They said, here's our 8-game mini season. 5-0-3. Wins over Colorado Springs, Hartford, who narrowly missed, Rhode Island on the up and up, and Phoenix at a better moment of their form. Among is a little banged up, used 2 injury subs. Partita and Zubak both came off against Hartford at the end of their game last week.
Which is going to feed right into the hands of Memphis, who make you work for the ball. I think Memphis is a fun band of misfit toys, if you will, under Stephen Glass. So whether it's this season or the past 2 seasons, really since the departure of Ben Pierman to the Charleston Battery, where it's your Johnny Baccheros, it's your Bruno Lapas, they did a great job of getting Heineman up to a quality level early on in the season. Maintaining it is a different thing. Oscar Jimenez comes over after his storied career with Louisville. These are guys with a lot of confidence, and I question the body of work overall for Orange County down the stretch. I'm with you. I get it. The unbeaten streak is great. To me, they didn't really beat anyone. What I mean by that is, yes, teams are looking to try and find a way to get themselves into the playoff conversation. But if we're talking about their body of work and some of their best wins being against teams that were trying to get into the playoffs, as opposed to teams that were title contenders or already had some sort of identity, I think those are two very different views of what they could be. Also, I took a look at shots on target, and the efficiency within that. It's something that I think Pittsburgh Riverhounds have done very well down the stretch. I still haven't seen that for Orange County. And defensively, Memphis have gotten a lot better. I think they do a good job of controlling the game and making you take low percentage shots. That doesn't bode well for Orange County.
All right, Switchbacks and the Roots are Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. Switchbacks won both games this season, 2-0 at Oakland in April. Colorado Springs won at home, 1-0 on June the 1st. Switchbacks turn on at just the right time. They win the last 2 at Monterey, at Sacramento, both 1-0 margins. Damas finishes their leading scorer, which is hilarious to me. Obviously, leading scorer of the champion Orange County in 2021. Oakland, 1 win in 8. Can't say that. Eliminated Birmingham 5-0 with seeding still unset. Lost against Sacramento in July, second place, was on the line back then. They finished 7th. Last 3 wins, Vegas, October 19th. New Mexico, August 31st. Loudon, August 10th. Dwyer hasn't worked out. Rodriguez back in the 9. Tim Sorrell started the finale. Does Oakland have any chance?
Slim. What can't you say, Mike?
I can't read that.
Okay, good job. Yes, they have a small chance. 1 in 10 is what I would give them. Baca has to be able to control, and I think the way that Zach Zandy and Speedy Williams have been playing off of each other, the freedom that Speedy Williams gives Zandy to go control through the midfield, Jairo Enriquez, his level of consistency that he can bring, the way that he inverts, really challenges Oakland positionally. And to me, they've struggled with that a lot. I think the responsibilities that they've been given, trying to shapeshift a little bit, whether Johnny Rodriguez is in the 9 or you try and deploy him from the width, if you're going with a single striker or you pump one a little bit higher, to me, that's probably the hardest ask for them. This is another game, though, kind of like the North Carolina game, where I actually favor Oakland if they can nick one early. You and I have a lot of conversations about games where we look at teams and like, oh, you can't go piss them off, right? Don't score early. You'll get yourself into trouble. I actually think that it favors this Oakland team because they get that little bit of confidence early. And also, defensively, I do see them work really, really hard. To me, the positional conversation that I just talked about is more frustration on the attacking side that sees guys start to wander a little bit. Defensively, I'm not as concerned if they can be sitting on a lead.
Last game of the weekend is New Mexico and Phoenix Sunday. You'll see it on CBS Sports Network, 8 p.m. Eastern. New Mexico and Phoenix split the season series. New Mexico won in March, 1-0. Phoenix won in New Mexico October the 9th, 2-1. Dev, at the moment, you called that maybe their biggest matchup ever. This has to jump it, right?
Has to, and would say that right alongside the Pittsburgh Charleston Battery game, this has upset alert written all over it. It is. I'm prepping for the game, Mike. I'll be on the call for it. I'm watching New Mexico. They seem off, and that's probably the best way I can put it. The quality of movement that we saw in the midfield early to mid-season just isn't the same. You know, the real lack of an identity at the 9. If you want to play Greg Hurst up there and drop down in and play off of him, great. They haven't gotten the same sort of support coming on the outside to then step in behind and test a back line. Conversely, if you put Danny Bruce up there and let him go rampant, there's not enough underneath. So there's a clear separation and identity right now. We didn't see that early on. And this Phoenix team, one thing I will give them is their ability to transition. Their ability to transition, Rito on the outside. I really like the acquisition of Margarita. He's done a good job. Tomas Angel, how much pressure can he get on Talon Maples and Kalen Ryden? Friendly reminder, that is a rotating back line right now for New Mexico United that due to injuries have not really had a stable cast of characters back there. Kalen Ryden, only, 16, 18 appearances on the year. He had to come back from injury. Talon Maples really didn't assure himself a number one spot until when Will Seymour went out, who's now sitting at the outside back spot. So that back four, a little bit shaky. Phoenix rising and their ability to exploit the width is the key to this game.
Worth noting, New Mexico, free fall the last 5, truthfully, but they started 7-0-0 at home. They finished a 500 team over their last 10 games at the Lab. We'll see if Phoenix can spring that famed Western 1-8 upset. When we come back, Louisville City ran away from everybody this year. Just how historic is that season? We'll try and put it in perspective next on USL All Access.
You're listening to USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. Here are your hosts, Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We're back on USL All Access. If you missed any part of the show, it's available tomorrow on the SiriusXM app. It's available tomorrow on the USL YouTube page. Coverage of every game of the playoffs. Of course, we'll be back next Tuesday night in our normal time slot to walk you through what happened and what's going to happen in the upcoming championship conference semis. Dev, Louisville City is the 1 seed. They're the Players Shield winner. You wrote it officially official. Organization records, 76 points, 24 wins, 86 goals, 16 home wins, most all time. Tie Phoenix and San Antonio for most wins in a single season from 19 and 2022, respectively. Try and put this in perspective. Just how good were they?
I would say that overall, when you take everything into account, if you just go by the numbers, and let's start there, it's a top 5 team for me. And here's why. If you look at total points, Phoenix Rising of 2019 didn't win a title. San Antonio of 2022, FC Cincinnati of 2018 all had more points. Only one of those 3 won a title. So the separation in terms of regular season is just comes down to point that's puts them at a top 5. Wins, top 5. Goals will finish second. Sorry, had to do quick math on top of my head there. They'll finish second overall. Points per game, they're going to fall a little bit behind because the other teams that we just mentioned, for the most part, either had more wins or were on shorter seasons, 32 games and whatnot. To me, the defensive one is the interesting conversation when it comes to shutouts and goals conceded because, respectfully, they don't really come anywhere near the historical teams. This is an offensive juggernaut for Louisville City. That's what their identity is based on, that defensively have had good performances. But if you take a look at the all-time greats that we at least include, the Rochester Raging Rhinos of 2015 under Bob Lilly, unbeatable. Like, it is ridiculous. Go watch one game any point in time in that season, and you'll recognize why, for the better portion of a decade, they held that record for most shutouts in a single season until San Antonio got there in 2022 to tie them.
And did it in 28 games.
And they did it, and Rochester did it in less games. So, the amount of goals conceded, the amount of shutouts with them, I look at other teams being better. I wouldn't say it's the most balanced team. To me, it's top 5, and I think that's fair. To make an argument for top 3, I think you have to be really strong in multiple categories. And to me, this is a Louisville team that is really strong 70% of the field, right? Yeah. If you get 35 yards from goal and back, it's not that they're shaky. It's just that when it comes to other teams and their body of work in previous years, it's hard to make a case for it. You agree?
I'm with you on that. And, look, I don't know that they'll be challenged all that much this week. We'll see what happens after. Do they need to win all the trophies in 1 year for this to be the best team of all time? Can they be the best team of all time with anything that they add from here on out?
I'll put it this way. If they go win a title, certainly if you win the East, and then you win the title. If you add 3 to your name, there are very few historically who have been able to do that in a single season. You and I talked about this coming on. There are very few historically who have all trophies in general. Only 6 teams all time, including Louisville, have all trophies. Some of that is spread out between multiple seasons, like the Monarchs. The Monarchs won the regular season in 17, then they won the West, and they won the title in 19. Orlando City did it, right? Rochester Rhinos did it. There's not that many a team that go number 1, that win the East, and then go and win the title. If they do that, we're having a real conversation about one of the greatest teams that have ever done it in USL Championship.
Also, while we're at it, Miami finishes on 11 points, lose 8-1 to Rhode Island. Might be the most pathetic result in championship history. 26 goals scored, 89 goals against.
News coming that's going to change that organization. I'm telling you guys right now.
From your lips to God's ear. Dev, did you learn anything this week?
I learned that, you know what, man? This is probably the most excited I've been for a playoff run.
Wow.
Just because, to me, there's so much parity with everybody else. Louisville, great. Everybody else behind it, you've got really good teams not playing well. You've got some teams that are coming on the end. Orange County is one of them. You've got an upstart Vegas team. I call it because that is a totally different organization this year. There are just so many storylines. I feel like things are less predictable than previous years.
I'm good with that, and I love the power of deceptive editing. For Devin, Emmett, Mike, thanks for watching, listening. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday night here on USL All Access. So long.
This is USL All Access. If you missed any portion of the program, listen back anytime on the SXM app.